Robert Plank Show, episode 174, Success Secrets to Boost Your Self-Esteem. Be present, remove negativity, and think big with Todd Lemense. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show, where we talk about building an online business and making money. Our guest today is Todd Lemense, and he's the author of the best-selling book Lose Your Ego and Gain the World. He has a huge social media presence with over 200,000 followers on Twitter. He's the corporate trainer and motivational speaker doing over 60 training appearances a year, and Todd is an expert on ego control and keeping things in proper perspective. He has been a guest on Fox News, ABC, and CNN, and his corporate training seminars are called Eliminating Negativity from the Workplace. So, you know what, Todd? To me, that sounds like when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. I'm sure you've never heard that one before, ever, have you?
I actually haven't, so that's some new material. I appreciate that.
Perfect. Feel free to steal it. So, I mean, what's on your mind these days when you're doing your speaking and your guest appearances and things like that, talking about negativity, perspective, ego? I mean, what do you see happening, and where do you see people needing the most help lately?
Lately, it's kind of like the weather. After '08, everyone kind of got humbled, and now you're seeing people with, who start doing better in their careers and are getting back on their feet. And they're back on their feet, and they are going out to say, you know what, I'm going to be my own boss. They're working at a place and says, you know what, I'm smarter than the people I work for. And I think if you're the smartest person in the room, you probably need to move to a new room.
That makes a lot of sense, and yeah, there's always all those sayings and cliches about how like your income and things like that are the average of the five people that are around you in your life. And so, when people are in that kind of space where they said, maybe like you said, like the financial crisis might have hit a few years ago and sort of jarred them loose, and maybe people are re-examining their lives, and maybe they say, well, I thought that the next few decades were going to be on this path, and now there is a better way. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on if someone was in that position, if someone was like working a 9 to 5 and sort of wanted to transition to something more for them? I mean, what do they need to think about? Like, what kind of questions and stuff like that do they need to ask?
They need to get the one thing I've noticed about people, that I've studied successful people. I'm 42 years old, my whole life, and one of the things they have in common is that they understand that whatever you do during the day, like if you're a student, that just gets you to graduate. If you're at work, that just pays the bills. And everyone has had the experience of making a certain amount of money, and they think, well, if I made a couple thousand more, my life would be set. And then it turns out you make thousands more, and you're still living paycheck to paycheck. So what I've noticed that people who are successful realize is work and school just get you through. It's what you do after. So the very first thing you do is take some baby steps. The old cliche, I hate saying this, but how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? In a small business, if you've always worked for other people, you got to realize that the time clock is out the window, and you are tired after work, and you have family and bills and whatever's going with it. We all have. It rains on everybody the same. You have to decide that I'm going to do more than I've been doing. To get more than I have to do more than I've been doing. And just making that decision, that a lot of times, from my own personal life, it was just hating my job so much. I just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm too good for this, I'm not above it. I need the money, but I need to do something so my life isn't going to be like this for the next 20 years.
Right. And there's nothing wrong at all with Baby Steps. What About Bob is one of my favorite movies. And so, can we talk about that part of your life? So, I mean, where were you at, and what were you doing when you kind of hit that breaking point where you were an employee and you knew something had to change?
I was actually at a training seminar, and the guy he was talking. He got up in front of us, and he's kind of an arrogant guy, and someone I'd read his books and I knew who he was, and he looked at all our salespeople and says, you guys think you're big shots, right? You make 100 grand a year. And of course we do. We thought we were big shots. And he said, you live paycheck to paycheck. And he wrote it all down for us. And I'm thinking, you know what? He's right. And and that's a terrible feeling. If something happens to my health, or I know things happen in life, I'm not prepared for them. And I just really needed to get more financially secure. And I think when you lie yourself and you pat yourself on the back, it's like calling your mother when you have a problem. Of course, she's going to say you're great at everything you do.
Right.
That's why you called her. You don't call your person that will tell you the truth that it says. And I think a lot of people, we know we were built with greatness inside of us. We weren't built to be average. And we know that. We always say it about our kids or someone we know. Oh, they have all the potential in the world. Well, everyone has tons of potential. That's not a compliment. But such a small percentage use them. And eventually I said, you know what? I know I'm capable of more. Even though I've failed in the past, I'm not going to fail anymore. I'm going to create my own business. I'm going to do what I'm born to do, and I'm going to make 10 times more money than I make now.
Awesome. So what was the first baby step for you, and what kind of business did you personally build?
I started out in construction business. That was the first business I started out. So I was in the Seattle area, the metro area, doing construction and painting.
Okay, so like, how did that process get started?
It started by the very basic step of getting a business card, getting a business name, knowing nothing about it, never have painted a thing in my life. Um, Tons of education. You can't get enough education. Experts are people that know a lot about a little. So you have to really just dive into that. And I went into it with the wrong approach. I went into it's not something I have a passion for, but for something that I thought I could make a lot of money in, which is not always the best route.
Okay, and but I mean that was just the first step of many as far as your freedom. So when you say education, what did you do exactly? Did you do like internet research, read a book, get a mentor, interview people? Like, what did you do there?
I think the very first thing is to get, most experience I've found is from on-the-job training. So getting yourself out there, getting the first job, whether it's, $100 job or $100,000 job, getting started. A lot of people, they say they're researchers, which means they're waiters. They say research. I think they're procrastinators. It's better to get and learn. You really only learn from your losses. You learn from making mistakes. And the only way to make mistakes is to play. LeBron James is one of the best basketball players alive right now. But when he was a little boy, he didn't say, well, I'm going to learn about basketball, or I'm going to wait till I'm in high school or I'm in the pros. He just started playing basketball.
Right.
Not thinking about the results, not thinking about the mansions and that came with it. But he focused on his jump shot, his drives, and those kind of things. And that's what you have to do in a small business. Get on the field. Very important. Or the court or the whatever.
So you did that, and so what sort of construction business what was this? What size was it, and what sort of things did you guys build?
It started with just me and my ex-wife, and then we had up to, I think we had 60 employees when we stopped doing the business. So it was substantial, and that grew over about 2 years. So it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of labor of love.
And you said that it sounds like that you said that was a mistake that you made going into that business, but it was a necessary mistake because it was a learning experience and it led to other things. So am I hearing that right? Did that business kind of fail at some point?
It did. And it cost me $500,000. So it's funny when people lose everything, they always say, oh, I lost everything. Well, you don't just lose everything. You're in the hole usually. So I was in the hole hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the business experience I had from that failure, I learned some from some of the things I did well. And we did a lot of things well. But I wrote a book about this, but my ego and some other things got in my way once I started doing really well, which I didn't control very well. So,
Okay, so your ego got in the way, and so what happened at that point? What happened next?
as far as when it went down,
Yeah, was the learning experience like as it was crashing and burning? Was learning experience like years later picking up the pieces? Like,
that's a good point.
how
Did I
did you
know that
switch
the
gears
ship
there?
was sinking and try to? No, I didn't. And what really, I really got full of myself. I was very young, and I was in my early 30s, and I really felt like I was entitled to success. I thought that this is going to sound crazy, and I'm just going to say it out loud. I thought I was smarter than everybody else. I thought I was entitled, and I thought things were only going to get better. I started to not treat my employees the way I should have. I started not value my marriage. I started to just be in excess in almost every part of my life. I started eating more, drinking more, spending more, doing everything but paying attention to my business. And my business is it's 100% your responsibility. You can't hire that out. You really have to. You can't expect what you don't inspect. You have to be present. Is the most important thing of any small business. And if you're not, it won't be there long. Like any relationship, if you're not present, it won't last.
Right, and I mean, I agree with that a lot, and I think that's a really important message for everyone to listen to. And from what I'm hearing with that, I think that we all go through, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we all go through that phase where we say, like, I'm kind of going against the grain of things, and that's good for a little while, right? And that's good to persevere through the tough times and all that stuff, and maybe double down on certain things. But it sounds like as things were kind of on the downturn, on the downward slope, then the problem was that instead of focusing on yourself, you're focusing on everyone else and everything else. Is that right?
Absolutely. And when you're starting out a small business, think big. Don't just think about getting by. Don't think about how much I'm going to make a month or how much I think I'm going to make an hour. Think I'm going to dominate whatever space I'm in. I'm going to outwork, I'm going to outservice, and you really can't fail. There's as many different ways to be a millionaire as there are millionaires. And I know you've been doing this a long time, and I'm sure you've met a lot of different ones.
Yeah.
It's really about the person. You know that one of my favorite football players is Tom Brady, and I am convinced that if he didn't play football, he would have been a very successful businessman. I could just tell by the way he carries himself, by the way he prepares, and how consistent that he is. That it isn't because he's a football player. People will think, oh, well, he makes a lot of money. If I made a lot of money, I'd do that. That's just the way he always has been, and that's the way he always will be. High achievers are that way. They weren't always that way, but they've worked on processes to get them that way. They still make mistakes, and they make more mistakes than most people because they try more things than most people.
Right. And it might, yeah, and it might be 100% mistakes until they finally learn like some of those hard lessons are there. So, I mean, so you talked about a couple things here so far, like, there's you said that one of the problems that you had in this first business you had was that you didn't keep your ego in check and you were maybe a little bit too arrogant at that time. But then I'm also hearing that people need to think big and not hold themselves back. So how do you kind of reconcile that? How does somebody think big but also not get carried away with the ego?
Um, Being present. One thing too I like to talk about it. A lot of times when people talk about their business successes, they will tell about all the tough times they had. Uphill both ways to school, and it was the worst time of the economy. Well, most businesses succeed. The ones on the big level succeed during depressions and recessions. That's when the most of them, because that's when everything's the cheapest. So anytime someone tells a story about how tough it was, I always ask them about, well, what breaks did you have? What blessings did you have? Because everybody, a lot of times when people think about starting their own business, they think they have to do it alone, and they really don't. There's so much information out there, and so many people that want to help you, and you can't succeed, without help from somebody else. Beyonce is an amazing singer, right? But she has a dance coach, a voice coach, people who dress her, people who help her with her makeup. Her parents have helped her through that, through choir lessons and all growing up. It's been a process. It hasn't been just her against the world. And even though she's world famous and she still has to promote her. She still has to do the little stuff. She still has to go and do the promotions and do the videos and stuff. She doesn't mail it in just because she's Beyonce. She just keeps working at it. And that's how small business is. You have to kind of, my mom used to say this analogy of, if you have like a train going, you have to keep fueling the train or else it will stop.
Right, and not only will it stop, but then it's more work to get the train going again from a stopping position than it is just to keep the train rolling, right?
Absolutely. And forgive yourself for your failures. A lot of people will just, you give up too early, and we all do it. Whether it's a diet or a relationship or a job or a business, we just don't think we can do it, and we're afraid to let ourselves down again. So we give up. But we really can do anything if we don't give up. That's the only thing. We don't have to be perfect. We're going to make lots of mistakes, but if we keep taking those baby steps, we're going to get to where we want to be.
I like that. And I mean, yeah, like there will be mistakes, but if we can enjoy the obstacles, enjoy the struggle, and know that that's part of the process in order to break through and get to the next milestone, that's pretty cool. And so what I'm hearing from you is a lot of, we're kind of switching gears gradually here is that, well, people kind of blame themselves or they give up too early. And I know that you talk a lot about negativity in the workplace. And as far as that relates to people, who are starting their own business and their own online business, I mean, from at least from what I've seen, there are quite a few people who are, in their maybe late 40s, late 50s, even early 60s, who feel like I mean, it's almost too late, or almost that they're set in their ways. And from what I see, there are a lot of people who they're just stuck in the same pattern that they've been stuck in, where they do these things, right? They blame themselves, they give up too early, they have that inner voice that tells them to give up. So I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, what kind of things, when you see these people who are just can't get out of this negativity cycle, what's the answer?
Well, I think that's a great point, and it's true. And things do get harder as you get older. You don't have the physical energy, and you have more dings just from life. You've been told no more times, and you start seeking out people who will talk you out of it. A lot of times, it really is just disguised laziness. Read some stuff years ago about, you don't like money that much. If you did, you'd have more of it. We all know how to make more money. It's like we all know how to lose weight. You eat less and you move around more. You don't, and that's what you can kind of disguise it as. But I think the thing that I always try to do, and for some reason with me, fear-based thinking, what if I don't do this? How am I going to feel if it was my kid or if it was somebody else? It's funny, we can see tons of potential in other people, but we see only our failures. I just don't think when you're 45 years old, it's not going to be easier when you're 46. It's not going to be easier when you're 56. The easiest it's going to be is right now. And the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs do is they wait. They wait till after soccer season, or they wait till they're going to, this one cracks me up, have more money. Well, if you don't start working on anything, you're never going to have more money.
Right.
and that's just the reality,
Yeah, and a lot of what you were talking about, and this kind of ties into to what you were saying as we started our conversation here, is that I don't know, like I hear a lot of people who, they have the 9 to 5 employee kind of job, and they want to start their own business, and then the thing that they always say is like, well, it's risky, there's no job security, and then they keep delaying their dreams for 6 more months. Next thing you know, it's 10 years later, and then they get laid off, so they really didn't have the job security that they thought they had in the first place. And so in your negativity training sort of stuff, and in your corporate training, I mean, is there like a low hanging fruit, or is there an easy, quick, step by step process for someone to identify their negativity and break out of these patterns and do better?
A lot of it is what we talked about earlier. It's who you surround yourself with. There's so many different kind of toxic people at work. And obviously just I go through all that, but there's ways to diffuse each one, and it comes down to just being a better communicator. And you have to get along with other people. When you even with an online business, you're still going to be dealing with people, and that's they have their own challenges, each person. But as you get better at it, it's kind of like when you're really prepared for a problem, then the problem just never happens. It's when you're ill prepared, so I guess it's the best way I can answer that.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense, because I mean, yeah, like that happens all the time, where like if someone just says a little comment or makes a little jab or has a certain kind of behavior, or whatever it is, like you said, whether it's a coworker or a customer, or a joint venture partner or something, it's easy to kind of let little things slide, and then maybe someone's a huge downer one day, and the next day, and next thing you know, you let all this stuff slide, and then they've kind of drag them down with you. And so you tell people that to eliminate toxic people and to become a better communicator. What else could they do to up their confidence and their self-esteem and stuff like that?
They have to start practicing it daily. They have to try to win the little battles in communication. I hate there's all these seminars and all this stuff over how to negotiate, how to win everything, how to dominate, and that's just not how our workplace works. That's just not how it works. You have to go for win-win all the time. And when you get better you got to do it at home, you got to do it at work, and you got to do it all the time. You got to do it with a barista at Starbucks. You have to be ready to always leave people with a good feeling. And it's not always possible, but you're always going to do your best. And if you're mindful of it and you work on it, you're going to be amazed. When you work with toxic people at work, they all have their value too. And managers that just make me so upset are the ones that say, "Oh, I just have all terrible people." You have to see value and the strengths in every single person because everybody has them. So, but that's what you have to use them for. I have friends that I work out with. I have friends that I do reading and writing stuff with. They're totally different kinds of friends. Ones are meatheads and ones are very studious, creative minds. But I use people. Well, use people is not the good word, but I surround myself with people when I'm working on different parts of my life.
Right. I mean, everyone has their purpose, right?
Absolutely.
So cool. So I mean, so you were saying earlier that so you kind of had a bad attitude about things, right? A bad outlook, bad mindset, bad way of dealing with stuff. So could you give us an example of some kind of area where back then you went about things the wrong way, and then in the present day maybe you come across the same struggles, but you act differently now?
I used to turn everything into a debate and an argument. I'm a overly emotional. I'm an ultra sensitive person. Kind of what you're talking about before. Someone can say one little thing to me, and that can ruin my day. I'm in the sales business. I get rejected every day. I'll have 98 people that are nice to me, and then one person is or one or two or say something that I just perceive as being negative, and it ruins my day. And earlier in my business career, I would get angry and I'd want to debate everybody. You ever do that? You get so angry, and then a few hours later, you wish you would have said this, and you wish you would have said that.
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
But so I prided myself on. People brag about having a bad temper. I was one of those people. Now I think, what an idiot. That's not something to be proud of.
Right.
So when you get in your own business, you're going to have to be more flexible. You're going to have to be more agreeable. People buy things from people they like. They buy things from people that are agreeable with them. Whether you like that or not, that's the way it is.
So overcoming that and being more agreeable and not falling into that trap of having to be right even though you're wrong, if that makes sense. But I mean, how does someone kind of get from that the bad mindset into the good mindset? Is it just a matter of, just like you said, like the practicing daily and like one little bit at a time and relearning these behaviors? But I mean, how do you silence like that voice, especially like how do you silence the monologue in your head of, I should have said this, I would have said that? How do you do that?
Well, it starts out with self-esteem, we all have. There's a reason we're maybe make a big deal out of everything, and it's really on us. We don't know what's going on in that person's life. I hate to say that, be the bigger person, but sincerity really shows. And people who really kind of are rude and are that way, and we all have different social skills. Obviously, you do what you do here with your program, so your social skills are above most, right? You agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's easier for you, but for other people who don't, they're not with the public, and they don't do radio shows, and they don't do public speaking. They don't always communicate the best way. So it's kind of like someone. You think about someone with a disability, you'd be more patient with them. So when
Right.
certain people say things to you, you just take a step back and you really listen to them. You'll be surprised if you give them a little time. You don't want to underrate anybody. You don't want to, you know, give them a chance. You'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised.
And I like that, and that ties back into what you were saying earlier about being present and about, if you're off in your own world and they're in their own world, then all these misunderstandings and all this bad behavior happens. But if you're kind of like you said, like whatever better way there is to put that, but be the bigger person and take a step back and see it from their point of view without being the victim and all that stuff, then it sounds like that's a much better way of going about it, thinking before you're acting and all that good stuff.
It is, and I'm still the same. I'm still emotional, and but I've gotten better at it, and I'm working at it, and I'm getting better at it. Every day, and that's what we want to do. We're always going to be the way we are. There's nothing wrong with the way we are. We're created that way for a reason. But we want the things that we're weak at, we want to get them at least so they're passable. And the things that we're great at, we want to make ourselves the best in the world at.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense, and live up to our full potential and become our best selves and all that good stuff. And so along those lines, so you do things like corporate training seminars, and you do all these different things. So could you tell us about your the speaking that you do, and tell us about your websites and maybe any books or anything else like that you have?
Yeah, I wrote one book, Lose Your Ego, Gain the World. And I do my seminars, or they're day-long seminars. They're called Eliminate Negativity from the Workplace. And they focus, it's a communication class. It's a very interactive. Um, after you after you hear it, there's lots of good points in it. And it's a training I do about every 3 months for different companies. And we go against different areas, and then we go back and go over things. So it's not just a meeting that I'm gone. It's a continuous training. And toxic, there's negativity in all kinds of different businesses. Sometimes there's groups of nurses, sometimes it's computer programmers. It's all across the board. So it's not just in it's not just in certain fields or certain kinds of people. It's an infected, toxic workplace can happen anywhere if you let it.
Right, because I mean, people are people, right? So no matter what the industry, the niche, or their profession, everyone is still going to have this problem that I mean, a lot of people don't focus on, but it sounds like you do. So where can people contact you and find out more about all this stuff?
Just Todd. Just if you just Google my name, Todd Lemense, and then it pops up. There's all kinds of stuff for me there. So
Awesome. And then so Todd Laments, and that last name is spelled Lemense. Is that right?
yes, sir. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, I think that you are perfect in your way as well. So, thanks for hopping on the show, Todd, and telling us these things that, like we said, a lot of people ignore this stuff at their own peril. And, if they do ignore it, then they might be wasting years and years on their true potential. And it sounds like it messes up life in a lot of other ways. It messes up their relationship, messes up their confidence. And if only they could, identify these problems and have the tools which you give to people, then their their workplace, their business, all these areas, I mean, their family life, their home life, all these areas could be a lot better. And they really need you, it sounds like. So Todd Lemense, and Google that. And thanks, Todd, for hopping on the show today.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it.
The iTunes page for this podcast is at robertplank.com/iTunes. And while you're there, click on the ratings and reviews tab, leave us a review, and click the subscribe button so that you always get notified of new episodes.